The phone buzzed 3 times. Kemi silenced it. Tae-yang didn't look up. That was when she knew, not that he didn't love her, but that he wouldn't notice when she stopped loving him. 3 weeks later, another man would sit where Tae-yang was sitting now. And Tae-yang would finally look up. But before we get into how it all fell apart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notification. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. I saw the doctor today, Kemi said, her voice quiet, trying to catch his attention. Tae-yang nodded without looking up. His eyes stayed on the laptop screen, fingers tapping steadily across the keys. She said the fatigue might be stress-related, Kemi continued, her tone control almost pleading. Another nod. More typing. Kemi watched him, counting seconds in her head. 5, 10, 15, waiting for him to ask the question that would never come. Tae-yang, she said, a little louder this time. He replied, still not fully facing her. Look at me, she demanded softly. He saved his document first, then closed the laptop with careful precision. When he finally turned to her, his expression was patient, almost expectant. I'm trying to talk to you, she said, frustration threading her voice. I'm listening, he said calmly, though his eyes suggested he was only half engaged. No, she said, her voice breaking slightly. You're waiting for me to finish so you can get back to work. His brow furrowed faintly. What's the difference? He asked, genuinely confused. Kemi felt something crack beneath her ribs, a splintering she'd carried for months. She smiled instead of crying. Smiling was easier than explaining why she was breaking. Nothing. Never mind, she muttered. Are you upset? He asked, finally looking concerned. No, she said, shaking her head. Then what is it? He pressed gently. She turned away. The words died in her throat. What was the point? She'd tried this conversation a dozen times. Each time, he'd nodded and promised to do better. Each time, nothing changed. I said never mind, she repeated, firmer this time. When she didn't elaborate, he reopened the laptop. I have to finish this report by morning, he said without looking up. I know, she whispered. We can talk tomorrow, he added, almost mechanically. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. Tomorrow when he'd be just as distracted. Tomorrow when she'd feel just as invisible. But she said, sure. Kemi stood and walked to the kitchen, poured water she didn't want, and stared at the city lights through the window. Behind her, the steady rhythm of his typing continued. The soundtrack of their relationship. She thought about the pasta she'd made 2 hours ago. About the table she'd set. The candle she'd lit. The promise she'd made herself that tonight would be different. I made dinner, she said quietly, still facing away. I ate at the office, he said casually, barely lifting his gaze. Her grip tightened on the glass. You didn't tell me, she said sharply. I forgot. Sorry, he replied, the words automatic and empty. Kemi dumped the pasta into a container, set it in the refrigerator next to last week's uneaten meals, and washed the dishes by hand, though the dishwasher was empty. She needed her hands busy. Needed something to control while everything else slipped through her fingers. When she returned to the living room, Tae-yang was closing his laptop. I'm going to bed, he said, voice neutral. Okay, she murmured. He paused at the hallway entrance. Something in her silence must have registered because he turned back. Are you coming? He asked, a hint of concern in his tone. In a bit, she replied softly. He studied her for 3 seconds, then nodded and disappeared down the hall. She heard the bathroom tap running, the bedroom door closing, and then silence. Kemi sat on the couch in the dark and finally let herself feel it, the loneliness, the exhaustion, the specific kind of pain that comes from being unseen by the person who's supposed to know you best. Her phone lit up on the coffee table. A text from Daniel Park, her colleague from the new project at work. Hey, did you finish reviewing the client presentation? No rush, just checking in. She typed back quickly. Almost done. We'll send it by tonight. His response came within seconds. Don't stress about it. Tomorrow morning is fine. Get some rest. She stared at those 3 words, get some rest. Such a small thing. Noticing that someone might be tired, caring enough to say so. When had Tae-yang last said something like that? She deleted her reply and typed again. Thanks. I appreciate that. Anytime. See you tomorrow, came his cheerful reply. She set the phone down, pulled a blanket over herself, and told herself she was just resting her eyes. She'd go to bed soon. But the truth was simpler and sadder. She didn't want to lie next to him tonight. Didn't want to feel the cold space between their bodies. Didn't want to watch him fall asleep in 30 seconds while she stared at the ceiling, wondering when they'd become strangers who shared a bed. So she stayed on the couch, wrapped in a blanket that didn't warm her, and thought about the man sleeping in the next room. She wondered if he dreamed about her. If he ever lay awake wondering why she'd stopped reaching for his hand. If he ever noticed that she no longer said, "I love you" first. Or if he just assumed everything was fine because she'd stopped complaining. Kemi closed her eyes and made a decision without realizing it. She stopped trying to bridge the distance. Stopped translating her needs into language he might understand. Stopped hoping that tomorrow would be different. In the bedroom, Tae-yang slept peacefully, unaware that he'd lost her that night. Not because she left, but because she finally accepted he'd been gone for months. The question wasn't whether their relationship would end. It was whether he'd notice before someone else did. 3 weeks passed like water through a sieve, each day blending into the next. Kemi stopped cooking dinner. Tae-yang didn't notice. Or if he did, he never said anything. Their conversations shrank into short, functional exchanges. "Did you pay the electric bill?" Tae-yang asked one evening, scrolling through his phone. "Yes," Kemi answered from the kitchen. "Do we need groceries?" he asked, still not looking up. "I'll order them," she replied. "Are you free Saturday?" Tae-yang continued. "I have a meeting," Kemi said quietly. "Okay," he said, ending the conversation. The distance grew so slowly that Tae-yang mistook it for peace. Kemi had stopped complaining. Stopped asking him to talk. Stopped starting conversations that always seemed to irritate him. He thought she'd finally adjusted to his way of loving. He didn't realize she'd stopped trying. At work, the project with Daniel was going well, better than she expected. Whenever Kemi spoke, Daniel paused his typing and turned toward her. When she mentioned she was tired, he suggested they take a break. When she shared an idea, he listened instead of correcting her. One Thursday afternoon, they sat alone in the conference room. Laptops open. Coffee cups empty. "You look exhausted," Daniel said, studying her face. "I'm fine," Kemi replied automatically. "Kemi," Daniel said again, his voice gentler this time. She looked up at him. "When's the last time you took a real break?" he asked. Kemi hesitated. "I don't know," she admitted. "A while." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Do you want to grab dinner after this?" he suggested. "Nothing fancy. Just food." She should have said no. "Okay," Kemi said, surprising herself. They went to a small Korean barbecue place near the office. Daniel ordered only after asking what she liked, and waited for her answer before speaking again. As they ate, something unfamiliar happened. Kemi laughed. Not the polite smile she'd worn for months, real laughter. "You have a great laugh," Daniel said with a small smile. "Thank you," Kemi replied, feeling caught off guard. After a moment, Daniel asked carefully, "Does your boyfriend make you laugh?" The question startled her. We're very different," Kemi said slowly. "Different how?" Daniel asked, not pressing. She set her chopsticks down. "He shows love differently," she explained. Daniel nodded once, then asked, "Does he show it in ways you can feel?" The words hit hard. "I should get home," Kemi said quickly, standing up. "I'm sorry," Daniel said immediately. "I didn't mean to make things uncomfortable." "No," Kemi said, shaking her head. "It's fine. I just need to go." Daniel walked her to her car. "Drive safe," he said. "Text me when you get home." She nodded without answering. Kemi sat in the driver's seat for several minutes before starting the engine, trying to remember who she needed to be when she walked through her front door. Tae-yang was on the couch when she arrived, laptop balanced on his knees. "You're late," Tae-yang said, eyes still on the screen. "I had dinner with a colleague," Kemi replied, setting down her bag. "Okay," he said, already typing again. That was all. No questions. No curiosity. No interest. She changed into her pajamas and got into bed alone. 2 hours later, Tae-yang joined her, the mattress dipping beside her. She pretended to be asleep. He didn't reach for her. She used to be the one who closed that space. The one who whispered goodnight. She'd stopped months ago. And he'd never asked why. The next morning, Kemi woke up alone. Tae-yang had already left. No note. No message. No coffee. Later that afternoon, her phone buzzed. It was Daniel. "I hope you're feeling okay today," his message read. "You seemed a bit off last night." She stared at the screen. He'd noticed. "I'm okay," Kemi typed back. "Just tired." "If you need to talk," Daniel replied, "I'm here." No pressure. Kemi set the phone down. She wasn't crying, but it hurt. She picked the phone up again and reread the message. "If you need to talk, I'm here." 7 words. Tae-yang had never said them in 4 years. She didn't reply, but she didn't delete it either. She kept it, a quiet reminder that someone had seen her and cared enough to ask. The dinner meetings with Daniel became routine. Nothing inappropriate, Kemi told herself. Just 2 colleagues working late, grabbing food, decompressing. But guilt sat heavy in her chest every time she laughed at something he said. Every time he remembered how she took her coffee. Every time he asked, "How are you?" and actually waited for the answer. Tae-yang noticed she was coming home later, but he didn't question it. He assumed she was working hard. He was proud. He told her so one night, barely looking up from his laptop. "You're doing well at work," he said casually. "Thank you," Kemi replied, slipping off her shoes. "It's good to see you taking your career seriously," he added. She paused. She felt something twist low in her stomach. She'd always taken her career seriously. But he just hadn't noticed before because he hadn't really been looking. He saw what he expected to see. A woman who fit neatly into the life he'd planned. Who didn't require too much emotional energy. Who understood that love was quiet and practical and steady. "Tae-yang," she said softly. He responded, still typing. "When's the last time we went on a date?" she asked. He paused. Actually thinking. "We had dinner 2 weeks ago," he said after a moment. "We ordered takeout," she reminded him, her voice calm, "and ate in front of the TV." He shrugged slightly. "We were together. That counts." "Does it?" she asked. He looked up at her then. Really looked. And she saw confusion in his eyes. He genuinely didn't understand what she was asking for. To him, being in the same room was enough. He couldn't comprehend that she was starving for connection while sitting 3 feet away. "Do you want to go somewhere?" he asked. "I want you to want to go somewhere," she replied. "I don't understand," he said, frowning. "I know," Kemi said quietly. "That's the problem." She stood and walked towards the bedroom. Behind her, she heard him sigh. Heard the laptop close. Heard his footsteps follow. He appeared in the doorway. Hands in pockets. Expression cautious. "Are we fighting?" he asked. "No," Kemi said. "Then what's wrong?" he asked. "Everything," she wanted to say. "Everything is wrong and has been wrong for months, and you haven't noticed because you stopped looking at me." "I'm tired," she said instead. "Then rest," he replied. "That's not," she stopped herself. "Never mind." "Kemi," he said, frustration entering his voice, "I can't help if you won't tell me what's wrong." She turned to face him. Her voice came out flat. Exhausted. "I've been telling you what's wrong for 6 months. You just haven't been listening." "When have I?" "Every time I tried to talk and you nodded without hearing me," she interrupted. "Every time I asked you to look at me and you finished your email first," she continued. "Every time I said I was lonely and you told me you were busy," she added. His jaw tightened. "I work hard to provide for us," he said defensively. "No," Kemi said quietly. "I make sure the bills are paid," he continued. "I plan our future. I take care of everything." "I know," she repeated, her voice quieter. "Then what more do you want?" he asked. The question hung between them. What more did she want? How could she explain that love wasn't just responsibility? That she needed him to ask about her day and mean it. To notice when she was sad. To hold her without needing a reason. "I want you to want me," she said. "I do want you," he insisted. "No. You want the idea of us. The stability. The partnership. The future. But you don't want me. You don't know me anymore." "That's not fair," he said sharply. What's my favorite movie? She asked. He hesitated. What am I afraid of? What do I dream about? What makes me feel safe? Kemi, he began. You don't know, she said, cutting him off. Because you never ask. You stopped asking a long time ago. Tae-yang ran a hand through his hair. I don't know what you want me to say, he admitted. I don't want you to say anything, she replied. I wanted you to notice. But you didn't. She walked past him into the bathroom, closed the door, sat on the edge of the bathtub. She pressed her palms against her knees, breathed through the exhaustion of finally saying everything out loud. Minutes later, she heard his footsteps retreat, heard the front door opened, then closed. When she came out, the apartment was empty. Her phone buzzed. You okay? Daniel texted. You seemed stressed in the meeting today. She shouldn't respond. She should put the phone down. Go to bed. Figure out her relationship like an adult. But Tae-yang had just walked out without a word. And Daniel was asking if she was okay. The contrast felt like being doused in cold water after slowly boiling for months. Long day, she typed. Want to talk about it? He replied. Not really, she typed back. Want to not talk about it over coffee? She looked at the empty apartment. At the cold side of the bed where Tae-yang should be. At the life she'd built with someone who couldn't see her crumbling. Yes, she typed. 20 minutes later, she sat across from Daniel in a 24-hour cafe. Your usual, he said as he set the cup down. You remembered, she said quietly. You only ever order one thing, he replied. He didn't push her to talk. Just sat there. Present. Patient. My relationship is ending, Kemi finally said. I'm sorry, Daniel said immediately. Are you? She asked. Daniel met her eyes. I'm sorry you're hurting. But not sorry it's ending? She asked. I don't know your relationship, he said carefully. But I know you deserve someone who sees you. Kemi felt something break behind her ribs. Not dramatically. Just quietly. Like the last thread holding something together finally snapping. He's a good man, she whispered. Good men can still be wrong for you, Daniel said. She nodded slowly. She let those words sink in. She'd spent months trying to make Tae-yang understand. Months of translating her needs into language he might comprehend. Months of hoping that one day he'd wake up and finally see her. But he never did. And sitting across from Daniel, who'd learned more about her in 3 weeks than Tae-yang had in 3 years, Kemi realized something. She was done hoping. Done waiting. Done begging to be seen by someone who'd decided she wasn't worth looking at. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? Daniel asked. For asking, she replied. He smiled sadly. That's a pretty low bar, he said gently. I know, Kemi said. But it's higher than the one I've been living with. They sat in silence for a while. Not uncomfortable. Just honest. And for the first time in months, Kemi didn't feel lonely. She felt something worse. She felt relieved to be away from the man she loved. And that's when she knew it was really over. Tae-yang came home at 2 a.m. Kemi heard the door from where she lay in bed, wide awake, staring at the ceiling. She tracked his movement through the apartment, keys on the counter, shoes by the door, the bathroom faucet running. He was trying to be quiet, trying not to disturb her. He didn't open the bedroom door. She heard the couch springs creak as he settled in for the night. In the morning, they moved around each other like strangers sharing a train car. He made coffee. She made toast. The kitchen had never felt smaller. I'm sorry I walked out, Tae-yang said finally, breaking the silence. Kemi buttered her toast. Okay. I needed to think, he added. Okay, she said again. He set his mug down harder than necessary. Kemi, please. She looked at him. He looked exhausted, the kind of tired that came from wrestling problems he couldn't fix with a spreadsheet. Part of her wanted to reach across the distance. Part of her was too tired to try. What do you want me to say? She asked. That we can fix this, he said quickly. Can we? She asked. I want to try, he said. Kemi set down her toast. Trying means changing, Tae-yang, she said. It means listening when I talk. It means showing up emotionally, not just being in the room. It means learning how to love me in ways I can actually feel. I can do that, he said. You've been saying that for months, she replied, her voice level and flat. You apologize. You promise, she went on. 3 days later, we're right back here, she said. His jaw tightened. Tell me what to do, he said. Specifically. I'll do it. That's the problem, Kemi said. I shouldn't have to hand you a manual on how to care about me. I do care, he began. You know the version of me from 4 years ago, she interrupted. You haven't noticed I've changed, she said. That I'm exhausted, she added. That I've been falling apart right in front of you. I'm here every day, he said. Being in the apartment isn't the same as being with me, Kemi said, her voice finally cracking. You're in the same room, she continued, but you're not here. You haven't been here in months, she said. Tae-yang stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I don't know how to be what you need, he said. Then maybe that's your answer, she replied. He stared at her. Something shifted in his face, the first real understanding that he was losing her and had been for a long time. I love you, he said. I know. Kemi's voice went quiet. But love isn't enough if it doesn't feel like love. He left for work without another word. Kemi called in sick and spent the day cleaning, scrubbing floors, organizing closets, trying to create order in a space that felt like it was collapsing. She found a photo from their first year together, both of them laughing at something she couldn't remember. A concert ticket stub from a night he'd held her hand through every song. A birthday card full of words he didn't say out loud anymore. She sat on the floor surrounded by the evidence of who they used to be and cried for the first time in months. Her phone rang. It was Daniel. Hey, Daniel said gently. I know you're out sick. Just wanted to check on you. I'm fine, Kemi said. You don't sound fine, he replied. She wiped her face. I'm processing, she said. Do you want company? Daniel asked. I can bring soup, he offered. Or just sit there and not say anything if that's what you need, he added. When had Tae-yang last offered comfort without being asked? She thought. You don't have to do that, she said. I know, Daniel replied. I want to. Those 3 words. Simple. Unburdened. Okay, she heard herself say. Daniel showed up 30 minutes later with soup, tea, and tissues. He didn't ask what was wrong. He just sat on the floor beside her, surrounded by the scattered pieces of her relationship, and let her fall apart. I don't know what I'm doing, Kemi said eventually. What do you mean? Daniel asked. This, she said. You being here. It feels like I'm giving up, she added. Daniel was quiet for a moment before speaking. Staying in something that makes you miserable isn't loyalty, he said. It's just fear. What if I'm making a mistake, she asked. What if you're not, he replied. Kemi looked at him, at the steady concern in his eyes, at the way he'd dropped everything to sit with her in her grief. She thought about Tae-yang at work, probably relieved to escape their problems for another 8 hours. I should ask you to leave, she said. Do you want me to? Daniel asked. No, she said. Then I'll stay, he replied. They sat in comfortable silence. Eventually, she ate some soup. Daniel asked about her favorite books, her childhood, what she wanted from life. Questions that had nothing to do with work or relationships, questions just to know her better. And she answered, because someone was finally asking. When Tae-yang came home that evening, he found them on the couch. Not touching, just talking. But the sight of another man in his space, making his girlfriend laugh, looking at her the way he'd forgotten how it turned his blood cold. Who's this? Tae-yang asked, forcing his voice to stay neutral. Kemi stood. This is Daniel. We work together. I should go, Daniel said, reading the shift immediately. No, stay, Kemi said. Then, turning to Tae-yang, she added, Daniel was keeping me company while I was sick. I'm here now, Tae-yang said. Are you? Kemi asked. The question hit like a slap. Tae-yang looked between them and finally saw what he'd been too blind to notice. The ease between them, the way Kemi's shoulders weren't rigid, the way she looked lighter than she had in months. I think we need to talk, he said. We've been talking for months. Kemi's voice stayed steady. Empty. You just haven't been listening. Then I'll listen now, he said. Kemi looked at him for a long moment. At the fear in his eyes. At the desperation that only appeared now, when it might be too late. Okay, she said. Let's talk. But the way she said it, resigned, distant, it told him everything he didn't want to know. Daniel left quietly, squeezing Kemi's hand once before slipping out the door. The apartment felt different with just the two of them, smaller somehow, the silence heavier than it had ever been. Tae-yang stood in the middle of the living room, his hands loose at his sides, tension radiating from every line of his body. How long has that been going on? Kemi replied, nothing is going on. Kemi, Tae-yang started. Daniel is my colleague, she said, keeping her voice steady. We've been working on a project together. It looked like more than that, Tae-yang said. She felt something give way inside her chest, not anger exactly, but something close to it. Something that had been building for months. You mean it looked like he was listening to me? Kemi asked. Like he actually heard what I was saying? Like he showed up when I needed someone. Tae-yang's joy tightened. I would have come home if you'd asked me to. I shouldn't have to ask, Kemi replied, her voice quieter than she intended. You should just know. You should want to. He ran both hands through his hair. I do want to. I do care. Then why does someone I've known for 3 weeks understand what I'm feeling better than you do? She asked. Because you talked to him, Tae-yang said, frustration creeping into his voice. You're telling him things you won't tell me. Kemi shook her head slowly. No. Because he asks. When I talk, he stops what he's doing and looks at me. He notices when I'm tired, when I'm upset, when something's wrong. He treats knowing me like it actually matters. And I don't. Tae-yang asked. Not anymore, Kemi said. The words hung between them, simple, devastating, true. Tae-yang looked at her like she'd physically hurt him. I love you. I love you too, Kemi said, her voice cracking. But that's not enough. It hasn't been enough for a long time. Then tell me what to do, he said, desperation bleeding into his voice. Just tell me and I'll do it. I'll fix this. Exhaustion settled over her like a weight. That's the problem, Tae-yang, Kemi said. I can't teach you how to love me. You either want to know me or you don't. I want to, he said quickly. I do. Do you? She asked. Because for months I've been right here, trying to talk to you, trying to reach you. And you've treated me like background noise. Like I'm something to maintain, not someone to actually see. That's not, Tae-yang stopped, swallowed, then tried again. I didn't realize. I know, Kemi said softly. That's exactly the problem. She took a breath before continuing. You didn't notice when I stopped smiling. You didn't notice when I started staying late at work because I didn't want to come home. You didn't notice when I stopped reaching for you at night. You didn't notice any of it until another man showed up. Tae-yang's face went pale. Are you in love with him? I don't know, Kemi admitted, surprising even herself. Maybe. But that's not why this is happening. This is happening because you stopped trying and I stopped hoping. I never stopped trying, Tae-yang said. You did, she replied. You just didn't notice because for you, love is paying bills and planning futures. But I needed more than that. I needed you to ask about my day and actually listen to the answer. I needed you to hold me without it being scheduled. I needed you to choose me over your work sometimes. And you couldn't. Tae-yang sat down heavily on the couch, suddenly looking smaller. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. When did I lose you? I don't know exactly. Slowly. A little bit every day that you didn't notice I was disappearing. I thought you were happy, he said. I know you did, Kemi replied. That's how little attention you were paying. He looked up at her then, tears gathering in his eyes, the first she'd seen in years. I don't know how to fix this. I don't think you can, Kemi said. Don't say that, he pleaded. Please. Kemi sat down in the armchair across from him, needing the distance. Even now, even in this moment, you're not asking me what I need. You're asking how to fix the problem. Like this is a project you can manage with the right approach. Then tell me, he said, his voice breaking. How does it work? What do you need? I needed you to care, Kemi said. To show up. To want to be present even when it wasn't convenient. To choose me, the actual person sitting across from you, over the plan you made for our life. I did choose you, Tae-yang said. I chose this relationship. No, Kemi said, shaking her head. You chose stability. You chose the idea of us. But you never chose me, the person, with all my needs and fears and feelings. You chose a life plan, and I just happened to fit into it. The silence that followed felt physical. Tae-yang opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. That's not fair. Isn't it? Kemi asked gently. When's the last time you did something just because it would make me happy? Not because it made sense or fit your schedule, but just because you wanted to see me smile. He stared at her, searching for an answer. When's the last time you asked about my fears? She continued. My dreams? What keeps me up at night? He said nothing. When's the last time you touched me? She asked quietly, and it felt like you actually saw me. Tae-yang stood up suddenly. Stop. Why? Kemi asked, staying seated and calm. Because it hurts? I've been hurting for months, Tae-yang. And you didn't know. You couldn't see it. That's not true, he said. Then tell me something about me, she replied. Something you've learned in the last 6 months. Anything. She watched him search his memory, watched his face change as he realized there was nothing to offer. I thought so, she said softly. This isn't fair, Tae-yang said, his voice rising. You can't just decide our relationship is over because I'm not good at talking about feelings. I'm not deciding anything, Kemi said, a strange calm settling over her. I'm just recognizing what's already true. We've been over for months. You just didn't notice that either. His hands were shaking. So what, you're leaving me for him? I'm not leaving you for anyone, Kemi said as she stood, facing him across the small space that felt like miles. I'm leaving because staying is killing me. Because I can't spend the rest of my life begging to be seen by someone who's looking right through me. I see you, he said. No, Kemi said gently, almost kindly. You see what you want to see. You see the woman who stopped asking for things. Who stopped needing attention. Who finally became low maintenance enough for your life. But that woman isn't real. She's just tired. She's given up. The truth settled between them, not cruel, not vindictive, just unbearably sad. Tae-yang looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time in months. And maybe he was. I don't know how to be different, he whispered. I know, Kemi said, tears sliding down her cheeks. And I don't know how to keep waiting for you to want to try. 3 days passed. Tae-yang came home early from work, not out of intention, but because staying late felt purposeless now. Over dinner, he asked about Kemi's day, his voice careful and attentive, like he was following instructions he'd found online. He suggested they eat together without phones or laptops. She agreed. They sat across from each other, the silence between them thicker than conversation. It should have felt like progress. It didn't. Every gesture arrived too late, carried out with the stiff precision of someone performing a role they'd never auditioned for. Tae-yang was trying, Kemi could see that, but trying felt different from caring, and she wasn't sure he knew the difference. She went through the motions because she didn't know what else to do. She answered his questions. She sat where he asked her to sit. She let him practice being present. But everything felt rehearsed, like he'd only learned his lines after she'd threatened to leave the show. On Saturday, Daniel texted, "Coffee this week?" Kemi stared at the message. She didn't reply. Instead, she turned the phone around and slid it across the table toward Tae-yang. He looked at the screen, then back at her. What do you want me to say? I want to know what you're thinking, Kemi replied. I don't want you to go, he said quietly. Why? Kemi asked. Because he wants you, Tae-yang said. Kemi set her phone down. That's not a reason to stay. Tae-yang's hands tightened around his coffee cup. Then what is? What would make you stay? I don't know if anything can, Kemi replied, her voice lower now. You can't become emotionally available overnight because you're scared. That's not change. That's panic. So I should have changed before, Tae-yang said. You should have cared enough to notice I was drowning before I stopped asking for help, Kemi replied. I'm trying now, Tae-yang said. I know, she said, looking at him. For the first time in days, her expression wasn't angry, it was tired. But I'm so tired, Tae-yang. I'm tired of being the only one trying. I'm tired of carrying us alone. And I'm tired of wondering if you'd even notice if I disappeared. I would notice, he said quickly. Would you? Kemi asked. Or would you just wonder why the apartment was quieter? Tae-yang flinched. You're being cruel. I'm being honest, Kemi replied. For the first time in months, I'm telling you exactly how I feel instead of managing yours. That's not fair, Tae-yang said. None of this is fair, she replied, her voice cracking slightly. It's not fair that I had to beg for connection. It's not fair that it took another man for you to see I was unhappy. It's not fair that I have to choose between staying with someone who doesn't see me and leaving someone I still love. Tae-yang's voice dropped. Do you love him? I don't know, Kemi said. That's not an answer, Tae-yang replied. It's the only one I have, Kemi said. Her fingers traced the rim of her mug. I know he makes me feel seen. I know when I talk, he listens like it matters. I know he's shown me what it feels like to be chosen, not just kept. I chose you, Tae-yang said. For years ago, yes, Kemi replied. But you stopped choosing me after that. You stopped courting me. You stopped showing me I mattered. You just settled. Like the work was done. That's how relationships work, Tae-yang said. They settle into comfort. No, Kemi said slowly. That's how they die. They die in quiet moments where you stop trying, where you stop asking, where you stop choosing each other over everything else. Tae-yang stood and walked to the window. His shoulders were rigid, his breathing measured. So you've already decided. I decided months ago, Kemi replied. I just didn't want to admit it. And him? Tae-yang asked. What about him? Kemi said. Are you going to be with him? Tae-yang asked. Tears burned at the edges of her vision. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. But that's not what this is about, Kemi said. This is about me finally admitting I deserve someone who wants to know me. Who chooses me? Who shows up? I'm showing up now, Tae-yang said, turning to face her. Because you have to. Because you're scared, Kemi replied. But I needed you 6 months ago when I first told you I was lonely. I needed you 3 months ago when I stopped sleeping in our bed. I needed you 4 weeks ago when I cried in the bathroom and you didn't ask why. I didn't know, Tae-yang said. You didn't ask, Kemi replied. The words settled between them like dust after something breaks. So this is over, Tae-yang said. Yes, Kemi replied. Just like that, Tae-yang said. No, not just like that, Kemi said. Over months of you not hearing me. Of you not seeing me. This didn't happen overnight. It happened every time you chose work over me. Every conversation you have heard. Every time you nodded without understanding. Tae-yang's composure cracked. I love you. I've always loved you. I know, Kemi replied. But love without presence is just words. And I can't live on words anymore. She stood and walked to the bedroom, pulling her suitcase from the closet. The sound of the zipper cut sharply through the silence. Tae-yang appeared in the doorway, watching as she folded clothes with mechanical precision. You're leaving now? Tae-yang asked. I'm staying with a friend for a few days, Kemi replied. We both need space. What's there to think about? Tae-yang asked. You've already decided. I've decided I can't stay here, Kemi said. The rest? I don't know. She packed in silence. He stayed in the doorway. Every item she folded felt like a small ending. Every drawer she emptied felt like another version of herself being left behind. When the suitcase was full, she closed it and turned to face him. I'm sorry, Kemi said. For what? Tae-yang asked. For staying so long that you thought everything was fine, Kemi replied. For not leaving sooner when I first realized we'd grown into different people. We're not wrong for each other, Tae-yang said. We love each other, Kemi replied. But we speak different languages. And I can't spend the rest of my life translating my needs into something you might eventually understand. She walked past him toward the door. He followed. Wait, Tae-yang said. Please. Can't we try therapy? Can't we? Tae-yang, Kemi said, turning to face him one last time. I begged for this version of you. The one who asks me to stay. The one who fights for us. But I can't unlearn being alone. I can't forget what it felt like to beg for your attention. She opened the door. Tae-yang stood in the hallway, hands empty, watching her leave. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Not loud enough to feel dramatic. Just final. Tae-yang stayed where he was, standing in the middle of the apartment, as if movement might undo it. The silence pressed in slowly. No footsteps. No voice from the hallway. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the echo of a life that had stopped mid-sentence. Eventually, his legs gave out. He sat on the floor with his back against the couch and stared at nothing. He didn't sob. He didn't collapse the way people in movies did. His chest hurt in a tight, unfamiliar way, like something lodged there that wouldn't dislodge. He tried to think logically. Space. Time. Perspective. Words he used at work when things went wrong. but none of them fit. What kept surfacing instead were fragments. Kemi standing in the kitchen talking while he nodded without really listening. Her pausing mid-sentence, waiting for him to look up. The way she'd gone quiet near the end, not angry, not demanding, just tired. He pressed his palms into his eyes, harder than necessary. He didn't know what to do with regret when it arrived this late. Daniel's face intruded uninvited. Not as a villain. Worse, as a comparison. Someone who'd noticed things Tae-yang hadn't bothered to register. Someone who asked questions without being prompted. That part stung more than jealousy. He reached for his phone, then stopped. Picked it up again. Scrolled through old messages with Kemi. Logistics. Checklists. Updates. When had conversation turned into coordination? He told himself therapy would have helped. Immediately followed by the familiar resistance. Talking to a stranger about feelings. Sitting in a room naming things he barely had words for. He dismissed it the same way he always had, too awkward, too indulgent, too late. The thought lingered anyway. Uncomfortable. Persistent. His phone buzzed. His mother, asking about dinner plans. Tae-yang didn't respond. For the first time, he noticed the pattern, how he moved through people assuming availability equaled connection. How often he mistook consistency for care. The realization didn't feel noble. It felt embarrassing. Across the city, Kemi sat on the edge of a hotel bed with her shoes still on. Daniel had texted earlier. "Are you okay?" She hadn't answered yet. Not because she didn't appreciate it, but because she didn't know how to explain what she felt without minimizing it. Tae-yang's name lit up her screen later than she expected. "I don't know how to say this right," the message read. "I'm sorry I didn't listen. I'm still bad at this. I see that now. No promises. No declarations. Just a clumsy admission that felt more honest than the speeches before." She read it once. Then again. She didn't reply. Instead, she turned the phone face down and lay back, staring at the ceiling. The relief and grief sat side by side, neither winning. Back in the apartment, Tae-yang set his phone down and didn't know if he'd done the right thing. He only knew that for the first time, he hadn't tried to sound certain. It wasn't growth that felt good. It was growth that felt exposed. Incomplete. And long overdue. Sometimes love doesn't end loudly. Sometimes it ends quietly, while one person is still learning the words the other got tired of waiting to hear.